Welcome to City of Aurora Funds and Appropriations. This video is designed to give you a brief overview of what fund accounting is and how we use it in the City of Aurora to help fund the services we provide to citizens. We'll also cover what an appropriation is and try to answer the question that I get asked most often: do we have the money for that? The first thing to understand is that fund accounting is an accounting system that records financial transactions for activity that has limited sources and uses. The funds that we bring in can only be used in certain ways, and we can only raise those funds in certain ways. The primary goal is to track the amount of cash assigned to those different purposes, and it is focused on accountability as opposed to profitability. In the City of Aurora, we have a ton of different funds, lots of different ones, but I have broken them down into kind of two sections: capital F funds and lowercase f funds. The capital F funds are those big ones that we generate revenue from property taxes for. This is your general fund, which handles most of your operating. We have motor vehicle highway, which handles a lot of our road replacement and reconstruction. Local roads and streets, that helps with patching, parks and recreation, and then cumulative capital development that allows us to assess a special property tax to help replenish some of the capital assets that we have in our possession. There's also a series of other lowercase f funds, and those are smaller ones that we've set aside to make sure that we monitor and track the dollars in a specific way. Things that we have in that arena are kind of like the endowment funds that we receive, our canine, donations, any kind of grants, park improvements, and also our record preservation fund. Now, the general fund is probably our biggest one, and within its revenues come from fines and fees, maybe some permits, property rental. We have fire contracts with both Center and Washington Township. We do receive a portion of local income tax that the county raises, but the big thing is property taxes. This is how we fund most of what we do as a city. Now, the general fund can be used on all manner of things: supplies, repairs, maintenance of various equipment and assets, some professional services when we need to rely on somebody else to help us. But the big thing, of course, is salaries, the employees that we have within our employment. Our various funds have different sources and eligible uses. A couple of the examples are motor vehicle highway. This is a state distribution of funds, mostly comes from gasoline tax funds, and it's based on our road mileage. Now, 50% of this must be used for repair, replacement, or building of new roads. We have used this traditionally within the last couple of years for our match towards community crossings so that we can leverage those dollars and get more out of it. CCD is that cumulative capital development fund. This is extra property tax, and we use that to fund capital assets, both repairs and purchases. Most of our CCD funds we have traditionally used to replenish police vehicles as we replenish those each year. A big one is gaming. This is not something that we get based on property taxes, but comes from sharing of revenues from Lawrenceburg and Dearborn County based on wagering at the casino. This is a home ruled fund, and we have lots of uses for it. We can use it for any legal purpose, really. And as we get closer to the budget season, you'll see this is where we usually make most of our investments for things such as big capital improvements, but it also handles a lot of our operational expenses. Parks and Recreation has some property tax that funds a larger portion lately than it did in the past, but it also runs on fees and revenues that it generates. Most prominently membership fees to the Ark, and then also those people that pay as they go or at the pool. They also generate some things for their for rental of the buildings. They still must follow those same fund accounting principles for budgeting. So we have to guess at what those revenues are going to be, which makes it very difficult. So what is an appropriation? An appropriation is the legal authorization to spend funds, and those are established during the budget process each year. When we say we are going to budget X number of dollars for office supplies for the police department, that is council providing a legal authorization for them to spend those funds in that way. All of these are reviewed by the Department of Local Government Finance, and they are the watchdogs on how we generate our revenues and how we spend it. They will take our budget and they will review the balance of the fund, anticipated revenues, and really make a decision on whether or not they will approve or deny our appropriations, our entire budget. They do not care about future years. If we project that we will end this year with anything more than $1, they will likely approve it. And that's where we can run into the danger of running deficit budgets for a number of years as those fund balances dwindle. So the DLGF is only going to be there at the end to say, you've gone too far. The public must also be given sufficient notice of any appropriation that we are going to increase. And that's why there's always needs to be a public hearing before anything can be approved. And this includes our regular budget. We will have two different meetings to establish the budget, one for a public hearing and then one for final passage. Periodically throughout the year, you guys are given an appropriation report, and this breaks down by fund, then by department, then by specific line item, all the different ways in which we have said we are going to spend dollars in the coming year. Each line will show you the amount appropriated, how much has been spent so far that month, so far throughout the year, and how much is remaining. There is an opportunity for forwarded and encumbered columns. This is money from the prior year that we've brought forward. And those really need to be very specific. Those need to say, hey, we are going to spend or take these dollars from 2024 into 2025 because of this reason. And that is very restrictive on that. On the far right column, you can always see the percent of funds left over. This kind of gives you a good ballpark feeling so that we are now halfway through the year. We should have half as much of our appropriation left as possible. So it's always a good gauge just to see where we are. Now, do we have the money for that? This is probably the number one question I get asked. And there's a couple of ways I come up with whether or not we do. And the first one is I look at the appropriation report. And I'll look at what type of expense it is. I'll look at which fund can pay for it, which department's requesting it, and kind of go through that and see if it fits within any of those areas. The next thing is to kind of look at donation and grant funds. If we're receiving a grant or donated funds, we can use those pretty well, quickly, as long as it's in line with the reason that we received the grant or donation. They are usually given for a specific purpose, and that is why we get asked. And we need to make sure that we do not accept money unless we have it for a specific purpose. We have in the past been caught by auditors and they said, hey, wait, you received this much money from this person. Did they say how to spend it? Because you spent it on this. And we've had to track that person down and get a letter from them. But sometimes even that we don't know. And sometimes there is non-appropriated transactions that take place where there is no specific revenue. And that's where we look at the fund balance. Can the fund support this additional expenditure? And will we need to make an additional appropriation? If we have to do that, we have to go through a public notice. The DLGF needs to review it, and we need to have a public meeting before we can even proceed. So it's important to build our budget to be very thoughtful about unanticipated expenditures that might come up. It's a very costly and cumbersome process to have an additional appropriation, so it's best that we plan ahead as much as we can. This is the first video. It kind of gives you a very broad overview of what fund accounting is and what appropriations are. The next one, I'm going to discuss building the budget, talking about wants versus needs, and kind of looking at maybe that non-tax revenue that can really help make life a little bit easier. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice day.